Thanks for the introduction, Mike. My name's Joe Muscat, and good afternoon. I'm a 2013 Nuffield scholar. My study topic was really looking at ways to add value to our sugar business, and the question that I came up with: can fibre crops such as canaf, sun hemp, and industrial hemp add value to the Australian sugar industry? So my study objectives were really looking to provide evidence to find, to investigate pathways to commercialisation of fibre crops and to develop a better understanding of the processing and marketing systems. And the question I kept asking is, could fibre crops add value to the Australian sugar industry? I certainly need to acknowledge some people, and my sponsor is certainly one that I need to, because without that sponsorship I really wouldn't be here today. And two people there that I really want to mention is Annette Sugden, who was the Executive Director of Sugar Research and Development Corporation, and Carolyn Martin, the Communications Manager at SRDC. Without SRDC creating the opportunity, certainly I would not have been here. Also want to acknowledge my family, and particularly my wife and my son, who's at home working hard, because also without their support it wouldn't really allow me the time to travel. I want to acknowledge the 9 terrific guys that I travelled with. Those guys certainly had a passion and a desire for agriculture and made the travel that we did together very special. And lastly but not leastly, Nuffield for such a wonderful program. Anyone that's been around today looking at what's coming from this program and what's been coming out of this program for such a long time, and I hope that we see it way into the future, because this is the best thing for agriculture in this country. It's remiss of me not to acknowledge iTravel, because I know that when you get into trouble overseas and you're miles away, you need a person at the other end that can sort some issues out, which these guys do very well. Okay, we'll get into it. Just a little bit of background about where I am and what I'm doing. This is just some photos of our property about January this year. So we're sugar and soy's there at the moment. But just a quick industry overview. We're a single commodity industry, a 12-month cropping system that exports 80 to 85% of that commodity. We've got less than 30% of our producers that are actually utilising the best farming practice. We're not, using a legume rotation controlled traffic system. And no different to any other ag enterprise, our costs increasing rapidly. This was sending red flags out for me and really triggered my study. So what are the fibre crops? These are the crops that we've been working with for probably nearly a decade, which makes us very comfortable in the production side of this cropping system. So we've produced industrial hemp at 24 tonne of dry matter per hectare, canaf at 22, and sun hemp at 20. And sun hemp being the cradle area offers a lot of other values in the cover crop areas and the biofumigant qualities in the rotation system. So the countries I visited were quite extensive. I certainly didn't get what I wanted from every country I went. I had a fairly good plan of what I wanted to extract when I got to that particular country, but it didn't always happen. So this is Germany, and I was at a German manufacturing plant, and the raw materials that they were using were, canaf, industrial hemp and flax, and they were taking those materials to an end product, and that's the evidence I really wanted to see. And it might be just as easy for me to use the cursor rather than move away from the mic. But the processing plant produced car components, and this market has been steadily increasing. And my obvious question to the manager that I spoke there: why is it increasing? The benefits that the end user could see, which was the car manufacturers, was that it was a lightweight, high tensile, renewable source. and it was at the end of its life biodegradable, and it had some burn retardant qualities. These guys were expanding into this material here, which was car impaction zones, really trying to protect the people that are inside that car. And they saw this as a big growth area for their business. We then went on to the Netherlands, and this operation was just mind-blowing for me. One of the highlights for my study, and we were at Don Agro. This was in the Netherlands, and Albert Dunn and his family had a 1,000-hectare industrial hemp operation. What we can see here is their stockpile of their raw materials for their processing plant. This is the feed system, and this is a part of the processing system. So they had 4 product lines coming out of their operation. They had an animal feed, which was the pelletisation of some of the leaf material. They had the separated core, which had a whole range of different uses. The separated fibres that went into an industrial market similar to the car componentry. And then they were working with a new material, which was a lightweight concrete called hempcrete. Now, this was a concept drawing when I was there, and really today this machine is actually operational. And what this machine's about is there's a component on the machine that actually strips the stalk of the plant while it's still standing in the field. It's got a conveyor that takes it back to a delivery bin. The front part of the machine is not much different to a forage harvester. It actually then cuts the stalks into 600mm billets and leaves those billets in windrows for it to start its retting process, and that's the first stage of fibre separation. That was quite unique. One of my other visits was Malaysia, and the development of the knife industry in Malaysia was really mind-blowing as well. In this flow chart here, we can see that they had a very well-planned strategy, and the upstream component, which was their seed production, the seed storage, seed distribution, production system and mechanisation. Their midstream was the harvesting, their post-harvesting storage, processing centre and fibre and core grading, and their downstream was product development, manufacturing and the promotion and marketing. So they had a very well planned strategy. So this is a research. This model here could be adopted to any research in this country, I believe. The group of excellence was made up of 5 key people, and they were experts in their own right, whether they were in engineering or marketing. They worked very closely with the customer, and in this particular case they were working with Airbus, Boeing and the Malaysian Defence Force. So they understood the requirements of the customer, and they put measures in place to get that solution sorted. So they worked closely with the University Putra Malaysia, and the Malaysian government supported both of those groups financially. Once those gaps were identified, the university went to work. This particular university had a faculty designated to fibre and increasing the value of fibre. So once that solution was identified, it then went back to the customer, and the product went to commercial use. They had, like I say, a very good strategic plan, and there was 6 components of their plan. They wanted to enhance productivity, accelerate research, development and commercialisation, encourage commercial production, enhance the development of the downstream industry, promotion and usage of the products, and they certainly wanted to invest in human capital. One thing I took away from the ICAF conference that I attended there in December last year was their current situation and their estimates. And the production system in 2010 was 2,500 hectares. Their estimates were indicating that by 2020 they would have 100,000 hectares in the production system. And if you remember the first slide, or the first couple of slides in relation to the yield that we've been achieving up in central Queensland, these guys were working with a product producing 5 to 10 tonne of dry matter per hectare. They made claims that they produced 6 motor vehicles in Malaysia, and they were using 38% of those vehicles were actually made from fibre. Their estimate by 2020 was that 100% of the vehicles would be made from fibre. And their claims were back that they wanted to go away from a gas-fired engine to electric drives. And to do that, they needed lightweight, high-tensile materials to build those vehicles. So they made no bones that they wanted to work at the high-end value of the market. Aviation and the Defence Force were the two target areas. And my contact was in the group of excellence, and they said to me that, you know, once we had the high-end value, then the rest would just follow. And I thought that was a brilliant strategy. Just so we're on the same page, I just want to highlight what I'm talking about in separation. I mean, this is the plant. There's two components of the plant, which is the skin and the core. The separation process is actually removing the skin and the core, but then further taking the lignins and the glues that hold those fibre strands together to become separated fibres, which is this material here. Separated fibres becomes the feedstock for the products that are being developed, and the core is the other part, the other component of the plant. Now, Malaysia had an extensive range of materials that they were utilising: building materials, bioplastics. Toyota had made a car completely from Kanaf. We spoke a little bit about the Defence Force and what they were using in fibre, and the challenge for the University of Putra Malaysia was to come up with a lightweight bulletproof vest, which they did, completely made from Kanaf fibre. So I wanted to, get some evidence of the pathways to commercialisation. In my travels, certainly in places like Canada, while they had some really good research and some really good products, there was very weak links to commercialisation. That was an issue. So in Malaysia, this was when they did primary processing, which is the first stage of the processing of the plant. There was a number of products that came from that and applications. But when they did their secondary processing, which gave them a higher platform to start producing components, well, then they had higher end values. And I thought that was a very good strategy. So the key findings for me, Malaysia demonstrated a well-planned strategy to provide the transition from tobacco to Kanaf, and that was the driver. Malaysia targeted markets with high-end use, coupled with targeted research to provide the solutions to supply that market. And I think that's an important way to go forward. And the bulletproof vest is a good example of that. I've seen no evidence that Australia is in this space, and it's something that we need to work away at. I also recognise in all the countries that I visited, the major limitation in the commercialisation of fibre processing is the capacity to process. World best is at 5 tonnes per hour. Germany leads the way in that particular area. So how does all this fit into the sugar industry? Well, I'll give you a little quick snapshot of the sugar industry. It's a 36 million tonne producer, creates about 2.5 billion in revenue. Has 35,000 hectares under production. Now, I'll just explain the production cycle quickly. We plant and then we harvest that crop, and then we get up to 4 or 5 returns. Okay? At the end of that cycle, there's a period which we call our fallow period, which is generally about 6 months. Okay? Harvested in December and replanted if you're doing an early plant by sort of March, April. Now, there's 40,000 hectares of land available that's in that system or in that cycle every year. If we had 100% uptake, we'd have 600,000. We had the ability to produce 600,000 tonnes of dry matter per hectare. And in separated fibres, we could add quite considerable value. Now, I'm a realist. I know that's never going to happen. But if half of that uptake happened, we could add $50 million of revenue to our industry. That $50 million would be shared by the grower, the harvester and the processor. So the synergies between fibre and sugar. In our business, and this is on our property, we're on a controlled traffic system in a permanent bed arrangement. So we can simply renovate our beds, plant either sugarcane or fibre into that one system. So we're not changing systems. We also know that by producing these crops, we're improving our soil biology because we're getting better cane crops behind them. As you can see in this picture here, Canaf and fibre crops present themselves very well for harvesting, just like sugar does. And this is Canaf being harvested by a conventional cane harvester and being hauled away by a typical haul-out unit in our industry, which is called an elevating tipper. So the product handling component of this cropping system fits very well into the sugar industry, utilising the capital that we've already got. These units then transload into a designated, well, it's a private rail system that we haul our sugar from the field to the factory. But more importantly, I just want to share this here, which is the cropping cycle. And if we have a look at this little bar graph, sugarcane harvest starts in June and finishes in December. The fibre harvest starts in April and finishes in May. The sugar planting goes from May through to August, and if you're running late, you can go into September. And the fibre planting would start in September and finish in November. Our traditional wet season, if you can say a traditional wet season generally starts in November and finishes in March. So the two cropping systems fit like hand and glove. So it is a new industry opportunity. I believe that now more than ever. And I also recognise the gaps to allow this to happen. But I know that sugar mills can process at more than 600 tonnes of cane per hour. The challenge is to develop the technology to utilise mill components to separate the fibres. And I do believe this can be done. It's certainly the limitation that I found in my travels. It was a question I asked every processor and every manufacturer. What's your limiting factor? And that's getting separated fibres. And just something that the Nova Institute gave me in relation to the markets, and this is just for natural fibre composites. 2012 there was 90,000 tonnes produced. Their estimates were that by 2020 120,000 would be needed. That's without any incentives, and if there were incentives provided, there'd be 350,000 tonnes required. So the challenge is really to do the research to allow our mill components to be able to separate fibres. So in conclusion, yes, I believe that fibre crops can add value to the Australian sugar industry. Thank you very much.